Travel through the world of cultivation and become a low-key cultivator. Keywords of the novel. Low-key in the cultivation world without pop-ups, low-key in the cultivation world TXT complete collection download, low-key in the latest chapters of the cultivation world reading. Chapter 1. Zhongxie, you are listening at novel full.audio. Chapter 1. Zhongxie, ho ho ho. Wu Tao woke up from a nightmare, his hands propped up on a hard wooden bed, his mouth wide open, like a drowning survivor, gasping for breath. Cold sweat dripped down the forehead, hitting the hard wooden bed and making a low and muffled sound in the cramped dark cabin. That nightmare, he seemed to be immersed in endless darkness, overwhelmed by palpitations and fears. Suddenly, an inexplicable terror struck in the darkness. Devouring everything, including him. Cough. Gradually calming down, he began to cough violently again, his whole body trembling, with a feeling of coughing his heart and lungs out. Before long, Wu Tao calmed down. At this moment, the sound of miners speaking came from outside. Yin Zheng. Wu Tao spoke inwardly, tucked away the blanket and got up from the bed. With a hiss, he took a deep breath and realized that his single garment had been soaked in cold sweat. Leaving the warmth of the blanket, the piercing cold air poured through his whole body like cold water. He quickly put back the blanket, trembling as he reached for the oil lamp and the fire fold. With a blow, the light from the fire fold brought him some peace. The lights were like beams, dispelling the darkness in this miner's room. He tucked in a tight blanket and sat bowing on the bed, casually holding a bronze mirror from the table. Inside the mirror, a thin face appeared, and the black marks on his forehead seemed to spread more than yesterday. Putting down the bronze mirror, Wu Tao stared blankly at the jumping bean fire. Unconsciously, he felt two warm lines sliding over his cheeks. Damn it, why did you just wear it? Wu Tao wiped his tears haphazardly, his heart filled with despair. One day ago, he was one of the thousands of 996 social animals on Blue Star. He came from a rural background and came to a big city alone. He worked hard at the age of 32, and finally managed to make it to a monthly salary of 130,000 yuan. He bought a house in his hometown city with full payment and raised enough dowry money to be eligible to marry his elderly blind date girlfriend who works in a convenience store and earns a monthly salary of 3,000 yuan. Victory in life is just around the corner, the game is about to pass, and you're close to shooting with just one kick. Why did you just wear it? Damn it, thief, what did I do wrong? Punish me like this. Wu Tao is strongly unwilling. After absorbing the memories of the original owner, Wu Tao knew the situation of this body with the same name and surname as him. It can be described with the 8 words terrible, life hanging on the line. Although he is a cultivator, he is the lowest level of scattered cultivation in the cultivation world, but only the cultivation level of the second level of qi refining. Scattered cultivation, without background, with low cultivation level, in this cultivation world where there are demons and evil forces, even one's own life is difficult to control. Not to mention cultivation resources. Some territories with spiritual energy and resources are occupied by the cultivation sect. So, casual cultivators like him often work for the cultivation sect, earning low spiritual stones for daily cultivation. The original owner was mining in a Lingxia mine under the Qingling sect. Every day, Yin Zheng woke up and went down to the mine, and Hai Jing finished work. After completing the task for that month, he only obtained 3 inferior Lingxia. If the task is not completed according to the quota, the spirit stone will also be deducted. Rent 1 piece of housing, spend 1 piece on food and clothing, and only have 1 spiritual stone left for cultivation. If you want to buy magic tools, good techniques, and become a Taoist couple, don't even think about it, it is recommended to go to bed early every day. The original owner is 25 years old this year, has been mining for 10 years, and has only recently cultivated to the second level of gas refining. At this pace, perhaps one won't even be able to practice until the end of life, until the end of qi refining. Poverty leads to change. Many years ago, the original owner planned to learn a skill in order to get rid of this predicament. Therefore, he spent over a year frugally and only absorbed the faint spiritual energy that drifted between heaven and earth for cultivation. Finally, he saved enough 12 inferior spiritual stones and gritted his teeth to buy a basic book on alchemy, attempting to become an alchemist worshipped by the cultivation sect. Even if it's not good enough, learning some superficial skills is still enough to make a living and not end up in this mine. Dreams are sexy, reality is bony. For many years, the original owner could not even depict a level 1 prohibition, but it can be imagined that he did not have a talent for refining weapons. The dream of an alchemist seems even more distant than immortality. But a more recent accident occurred. 3 days ago, the original owner went down to the mine cave, and his body was filled with evil energy. The evil energy was constantly spreading in his body. At this level of spread, if he did not receive treatment, he would die for about 3 months. As for why the original owner died early and let Wu Tao pass through, it is unknown. In fact, this level of evil can be eliminated with just a first-level intermediate breaking evil talisman, but the original owner did not take advantage of the usual spirit stones in order to learn how to refine weapons, so there was no enough spirit stones to purchase breaking evil talismans. A first-level intermediate breaking evil talisman with 20 lower-grade spirit stones. He is still 15 yuan short. How can I change this situation? Wu Tao sighed in his heart, even worse than his previous life, at least there was no risk of his life in that life. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. According to the minor regulations signed with the same mine, the evil in the mine belongs to the category of work-related injuries. If you apply for it, you can definitely receive the spirit stone to purchase the evil breaking talisman. Wu Tao remembered from his memory that the original owner had already declared to the mine manager, and 3 days had passed, and the approval process should have been completed. Thinking of this, Wu Tao put on his clothes and opened the door. The miners were nowhere to be seen outside, and they all went down to the mine. He tightened his collar and swallowed the flames in the brazier on both sides of the mountain road, heading towards the steward's residence. Not long after, the steward's residence had arrived. Wang Guancher's mansion was shrouded in a faint moonlight, and when he looked into the courtyard, there was no flashlight at the top of the house. At this moment, he suddenly realized that manager Wang was different from the miners, and he had to sleep until Chen Jing woke up. Sure enough, there is a high or low distinction between people, no matter which world they are in. Wu Tao stood outside the Wang steward's office waiting. Time slowly passed by, initially a glimmer of daylight, and then this thread gradually expanded, like the eyelids of a sleeping person. When they opened, it was already dawn. The sun poured down on Wu Tao's face, and the black mark on his forehead seemed to twist under the sunlight. At this moment, his ears twitched and he quickly stood up, listening attentively to the subtle voices coming from the yard. The male voice is the voice of Steward Wang, and there are 2 female voices, coquettishly whimpering, as if blaming Steward Wang for refusing to calm down during the day. As is well known, manager Wang raised 2 young ordinary women in the mine to take care of his daily utensils. Wu Tao couldn't help but be moved by the scenery, and her emotions instantly sank. She thought about her past life, worked hard to earn a down payment in dowry, but never even entered the door. Her ex-boyfriends, on the other hand, only needed some cheap sweet words to freely enter and exit. The original owner 25 is also a young child. 2 tragic lives. Who else is there? Starting from today, Master Ji's diary will be my life motto. Wu Tao secretly swore in his heart that he would never do anything on his own in this life. After waiting for about 3/4 of an hour, the door opened and Steward Wang came out. When he saw Wu Tao, he was taken aback and said sternly, "Which district of miner are you from? You didn't go to mine early in the morning. What are you doing here? If you haven't completed the task, you'll have to buckle the spirit stone." Steward, I am Wu Tao, a miner from Zone 3. 3 days ago, I encountered evil in the mine cave. At that time, I had already declared to the steward. I came today to ask if the declaration results have been obtained. Wu Tao quickly nodded and bowed, squeezing out a flattering smile and explaining in detail. Steward Wang was dressed in luxurious attire and had a fat figure. Upon hearing the explanation, he withdrew his stern expression and glanced at Wu Tao. So it's you, come with me. Wu Tao immediately followed Manager Wang to his usual place of work. Manager Wang handed over a piece of paper, which Wu Tao took. Upon seeing it, his heart was filled with anger. It was actually a voluntary contract to leave the mine normally. Wu Tao suppressed his anger in his heart and looked at Manager Wang with a smile like a grandson. He forced himself to say, "Manager, did you take the wrong one? I went to the mine to report my work injury." Steward Wang interrupted Wu Tao with a blank expression. "Wu Tao, I didn't take it wrong. You are now possessed by evil and can no longer go down to the mine. Leaving the mine is your best choice. By signing this voluntary contract, you can still get the Spirit Stone for the next half-month. As for your work-related injury application, the Qingling Zhongxie Hall has not approved it. This is the best choice I have made for you from your perspective." Impossible. As it concerns his life, Wu Tao also wanted to fight for it. According to the minor regulations, the Qingling Zhongxie Hall cannot refuse approval. Steward Wang snorted coldly, "What's wrong? Do you still have to go to the Shuo Hall to appeal?" This cold snort made Wu Tao completely calm down. He looked at Manager Wang in a daze, and understood the threat on the other person's face. Manager Wang fed his work-related injury compensation into his own stomach. If he dares to do so, he must have connections with the Shuo Hall and is not afraid to appeal himself. Even if the appeal is really made, the Shuo Hall will not do its best to help a mere minor. It will inevitably drag on until it is necessary to execute it. If Manager Wang excuses himself for not having a Spirit Stone, the Shuo Hall will ask Wu Tao to provide evidence that Manager Wang has a Spirit Stone on his body to the Shuo Hall. Manager Wang is the manager of the mine. As a miner with a low status, how can he provide evidence of Manager Wang's Spirit Stone? Wu Tao has understood this set several times in his past life. Seeing Wu Tao silent, Manager Wang chuckled and said slowly, "Wu Tao, sign it." Wu Tao knew that if he didn't sign it himself, he would have to sign it. Faced with Wang Guanshi in the later stage of qi refining, he had no ability to resist. No matter how unwilling you are, what can you do? Thinking of this, he took a brush, signed his name, and printed his hand. "Steward, I have signed it. Can you give me the half-month Spirit Stone? In the current situation, a half-Spirit Stone is better than none." Steward Wang looked at the name and fingerprint on the voluntary contract with satisfaction, and then heard Wu Tao's words. He snorted coldly and said, "Wu Tao, you haven't been down the mine for 3 days, which has caused great losses to the mine. I won't hold you accountable for this loss. It's good of my heart. Do you still want the Spirit Stone?" "You." Wu Tao clenched his fist and wished he could hit his disgusting pig face with a punch, but the mature rationality he had honed prevented him from taking action. "Get lost." Steward Wang brushed his sleeve. Wu Tao gritted his teeth, with no sadness or joy on his face. Finally, he glanced at Manager Wang without saying anything and turned around to leave. "San Xiu, a dog-like thing." Watching Wu Tao's disheveled back, Manager Wang sneered. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Hope you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Hope Bang. Closing the door, Wu Tao collapsed on the bed like a dead dog. Two memories of this life and the past shuttle back and forth in my mind, anger, grievance, discomfort, and unwillingness intertwined like threads, densely covering him and suffocating him. The life experiences of 2 lifetimes seemed to persuade him to compromise with life. When facing powerful forces, he should endure for a moment, endure the calm waves, and take a step back from the vast sea and sky. The more you think, the more angry you become. Damn it, I can't bear it anymore. Let's compromise like this. I want to be happy and have grudges, and I want to criticize. At this moment, Wu Tao's pent-up emotions erupted. He got up and punched the hard wooden bed, naturally, in one go. After venting, Wu Tao's emotions quickly stabilized. He needs to accept the reality of time travel. We also need to face the challenges ahead. The act of managing affairs by Wang completely cut off his career path. But what can he do? In the rule of law society of his past life, he had no way, let alone in this world ruled by immortality. Without receiving compensation from the evil, without breaking the evil talisman, he will undoubtedly die in 3 months. Wu Tao pondered and his gaze fell quietly on the flickering candle. The candle was small, but it burned with all its strength, and his gaze seemed to be lit up by the candle. This is actually a world where one can cultivate immortality, and there must be hope. Have I encountered fewer setbacks in my past life? I still stand firm. Yes, cultivating immortality is hope. I can't easily fulfill others' wishes. Steward Wang, my 20 spiritual stones are temporarily stored with you until I come back to retrieve them. Quickly leave the mine to prevent the assassins under the supervision of the king. Thinking of this, Wu Tao immediately took action and began to tidy up the belongings of the original owner. Following his memory instinct, he quickly packed up the belongings of the original owner one by one. 5 lower-grade spirit stones. 25 broken spirit stones. In the circle of cultivators, spirit stones are the universal currency. 100 lower-grade spirit stones can be exchanged for 1 medium-grade spirit stone. 100 medium-grade spirit stones can be exchanged for 1 high-quality spirit stone. As for broken spirit stones, they are made from discarded or cut edges of spirit stones during mining. 100 broken spirit stones can be exchanged for 1 inferior spirit stone, but no one foolishly exchanges them for inferior spirit stones. Usually, they can only be used to purchase daily necessities such as clothing and food. There are 3 books about cultivation. Sanyang Gong. Qi refining chapter is the main cultivation method of the original master, the refining method and 5 prohibitions of first-order lower-grade robes, and 5 basic spells. There are also 2 books on how to handle people and things. What attitude should one maintain when facing disciples in the cultivation sect, and the language art of communicating with highly skilled cultivators. Finally, these 2 books show that in this world, cultivators with low cultivation are full of survival desires. 20 forbidden practice spirit boards were used by the original owner to practice the prohibition of refining tools. 7 spark stones. 2 pounds of first-order junior demon silk. An iron sword. A set of changed clothes. This is all that the original owner left for Wu Tao. Packed into a bundle, Wu Tao left the mine where he had been staying for 10 years. After mining for 10 years, he ended up with nothing and was driven away like a defeated dog, with little time left. As I have said in my past life, working is a waste of time, and when I grow old, I still have to go to the ICU. Leaving the range of the mine, Wu Tao found a place to hide. After an hour, no one came to pursue him, and he couldn't help but laugh at himself. I, like an ant-like casual cultivator, am still a dying person. How could Steward Wang take it seriously? He thought that Steward Wang would come out and eradicate the root cause, but a person like him is not worth Steward Wang's efforts. He just needs to survive on his own. Even if he manages to survive, can a casual cultivator still turn the tide? Wu Tao finished mocking himself and ran towards the foot of the mountain. He needs to arrive at Shushan City before dark, and once it's nighttime, the wilderness is very unsafe. At dusk, Wu Tao looked up at a dental shop called Anju Xian Jia Xing, covered his hood, and walked in. The dental butler, dressed in a professional robe, was sitting behind the counter, calculating with a clattering sound, muttering words. When he saw a guest coming, he looked up and said, "Do you want to rent a house, Taoist friend? I have no sense of service at all." Wu Tao nodded politely and said, "I've seen someone in charge before. I need a single room." The dental butler took a file from his hand and casually flipped through it, saying, "Let me take a look. There is a single room in Qingyi Lane in the western outer city with complete facilities, including a soundproof array, an anti-peeping array, and an illumination array. 6 inferior spirit stones are available for 1 month, with 3 paid for 1. Wu Tao's mouth twitched and he arched his hand to apologize, saying, "Do you have any cheaper ones, such as soundproof arrays?" "It's okay if you don't have them." This 5-spirit immortal cultivation city was jointly built by Wuchuan Mountain and Qingling sect, and was governed by dividing the east and west. He came to the western city under the jurisdiction of Wuchuan Mountain. To be precise, it is the western outer city, built by disciples of Wuchuan Mountain around the walls of the Shuxian city, providing a safe residence for scattered cultivators and preventing them from being invaded by wild monsters. At some point, the disciples of the sect were too lazy to take care of it and outsourced it all to the small cultivation forces. These small cultivation forces have installed various cheap formations, and the rent has directly increased several times. The dental butler glanced at Wu Tao and said, "The cheaper ones are all on the outermost edge, and safety is not as good as the inner circle. Do you want to think carefully, Taoist friends? I've figured it out. A single room in Xinda Lane without any facilities. 2 inferior spirit stones are available for 1 month, with a deposit of 3 to pay 1. 10 broken spirit stones are used for night incense, 2 broken spirit stones are used for street cleaning, and 3 broken spirit stones are used for identity card management." With a lot of miscellaneous expenses, Wu Tao sighed in his heart and smiled apologetically, "Can we deposit 1 to pay 1? You said you." An hour later, in Xinda Lane, Wu Tao looked at where he would settle in the future. A single room of up to 10 square meters, including a bathroom, without a toilet. Every day, one has to carry a tiger seed to a dedicated night incense collection place to collect feces and urine. A hard wooden bed against the wall, an old square wooden table covered in grooves, with traces of time written on it, nothing else. It's too difficult. Wu Tao couldn't help but sigh as he touched the last spiritual stone on his body. He drooled so hard that he finally convinced the dental staff to grant him a month's grace by offering him a deposit, payment, and rent. "In a month's time, I have to pay 6 spirit stones. It's too difficult to do scattered repairs, no wonder I mainly went to mine, at least the rent wasn't that expensive." After a day of running around, Wu Tao was starving and unable to bear it. The cultivators during the qi refining period had not yet completely cleared the valley and still needed to eat, drink, and sprinkle. However, the cultivators ate spiritual rice specially grown by spiritual planters, and the meat was also specially bred as spiritual beast meat with spiritual energy. This helps with cultivation. Wu Tao is now so poor that he can't afford to eat lingmi and lingru. He went to the market and bought 30 kilograms of plain rice and 10 kilograms of ordinary animal jerky with 2 pieces of broken lingshire. These supplies are enough for him to eat for 10 days. Cooking by myself, after a simple meal, it also got dark. Under the dim light of the oil lamp, the room quieted down and at night, Wu Tao felt a strange discomfort. It wasn't until he heard the sound of locking the door next door that he regained his composure. The most important thing now is to live. Wu Tao muttered and took out the book, Refining Methods and 5 Prohibitions of the First-Rank Lower-Grade Robe, and the Forbidden Practice Spiritual Board. He needed a spirit stone to purchase a breaking evil talisman to break the yin and evil on his body, and could only break through from the refining tool. Under the dim light of the oil lamp, Wu Tao picked up a book and began reading. The book describes the method of refining the first-level lower-level robe, as well as 5 prohibitions, namely the first-level dust avoidance prohibition, the first-level rain avoidance prohibition, the first-level cool prohibition, the first-level second-level gust prohibition, and the first-level third-level spiritual light mask prohibition. The first 3 prohibitions are all lifestyle prohibitions, which are optional for cultivators. Only the prohibition of gusts and the prohibition of spirit masks have value and selling points. Gale prohibition can increase speed and make walking like a wind, making it the best escape. Spirit light mask prohibition can trigger a layer of spiritual power light mask to defend against attacks. The memory of the original owner Wu Tao has been fused and integrated, and he also has a basic understanding of alchemy. The most important thing in alchemy is to depict the prohibition, and then depict the prohibition into the preliminarily refined robe, which can be called a magic weapon. And the cultivator's refining of magical tools is to refine the prohibitions in order to use them freely. In order to avoid wasting materials, the refining apprentices practice prohibition and use the prohibition practice spiritual board. The original owner has been practicing a level 1 coolness restriction, but his talent is extremely poor. Over the years, he has not even depicted 1% of this restriction. I'll give it a try. Wash hands. Can bring good luck. Calm down. I prayed to the known gods and Buddhas in my heart. Let's get started. Wu Tao picked up a forbidden practice spiritual board, his heart twitched, and he activated the familiar 3 yang gong, carefully controlling his spiritual power. His spiritual power was like a knife, leaving shining lines on the spiritual board. The lines are winding, mysterious, and interwoven suddenly. With a growl, like a short circuit on a circuit board, a spark appeared on the spiritual board, and all the lines outlined in front turned black in an instant, losing their charm. Wu Tao frowned. Still stuck in the original master's progress, doesn't it mean that my refining talent is just as bad as the original master's? My soul is different, so my talent should have changed, right? Is it difficult? God wants to kill me, my heart is as dead as ashes. Just as Wu Tao was in despair, a light suddenly jumped in front of him, forming lines of text. Immortal cultivation panel loading, successfully loaded, scanning personal information, name. Wu Tao, life. 25/25, remaining 3 months, realm. Gas refining level 2, practice. 3 Yang Gong Qi Refining Chapter, Level 2. 55%, Spells. Fireball Beginner, 60%, Cleansing Beginner, 12%, Magic. None, loading completed, randomly generating your main profession. Randomly generating your secondary profession. Staring blankly at the subtitles in front of him, Wu Tao's eyes gradually came to life, and a flame of hope burned fiercely in his heart. It's really a never-ending journey, he said with a joyful expression as he watched each profession jump. He silently prayed, refining master, refining master. The main profession has been successfully generated, alchemist. When you choose this profession, you often have unexpected inspirations along with alchemy, and in your career, you will be luckier than others. Professional talent bonus. 50%, active, career luck bonus. 50%, passive, O. The secondary profession has been successfully generated, body cultivation. Hey, I am a body cultivation. Are you ready to post it when you fight with me? Choosing this profession will make body cultivation techniques and understanding body cultivation spells your buff. The harder you work, the luckier you will be. Along the way, you will be even luckier. Professional talent bonus. 50%, active, career luck bonus. 50%, passive, this. The first and second level sprint ban has been changed to the fast wind ban, as we all know. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Neighbors, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Neighbors. This cultivation panel is actually a cultivation game I played in my previous life when I was bored. I remember only one profession can be randomly generated, how can I still generate a sub-profession? It is said that games kill people, but unexpectedly, in this life, it was games that saved his life and gave him hope to survive. According to the common sense of this world, cultivating the 4 skills of immortality and the formation of elixirs and talismans are all vast and extensive skills. Even if the cultivator has a long lifespan, they have to devote their entire life to studying one, and have no time to study the art of combat. Therefore, in martial arts battles, the 4 art masters are slightly inferior. However, as long as they achieve success in a particular skill, they will be worshipped by the sect for good protection, and there is never a need to work hard in martial arts. There is no danger and there is no need to worry about cultivation resources, so the identity of the 4 art masters in the cultivation world is extremely prestigious. My main profession is an alchemist, and one day in the future, I will also become a prestigious alchemist. My secondary profession is physical training, invincible in close combat, amazing in defense, and filling in my weaknesses. I have no worries about saving my life. However, cultivating immortals can lead to one becoming immortal and 10,000 falling immortals, which is extremely cruel. I still need to maintain a low profile in my actions in order to go further. As for the profession of physical cultivation, if it is not exposed, it should not be exposed. I need to be a qualified 6th generation. I'm just an alchemist, not good at martial arts. After some contemplation, Wu Tao made a long-term development plan. Just now I drew a forbidden practice spiritual board, which is extremely exhausting. Although the system has descended, Wu Tao has no intention of testing it. His cultivation is low now and he is not a true immortal. He cannot eat, drink, and sleep without it. Go to bed first and practice tomorrow. After being afflicted with evil, Wu Tao could feel that his spirit and energy had deteriorated over time. The next morning, as it was still early morning, Wu Tao got up and carried a tiger seed. He walked out the door and went to the dedicated night incense collection place. After pouring it out, he returned to his residence. As soon as he arrived at the door, he saw his neighbor unlocking the door. It was a female neighbor wearing a light blue double-breasted skirt, revealing 2 white lotus-like arms. At this moment, the female neighbor also heard Wu Tao's footsteps and instinctively turned her head to look towards Wu Tao's side. Looking at each other, Wu Tao smiled and said, "Hello, I moved in yesterday." The tired face of the female neighbor was taken aback, as if she didn't expect Wu Tao to greet her. She nodded and responded, "Hello." After responding, she opened the door and went in. Talking about it, Wu Tao didn't care either. He stood at the door with his tiger in his hand for a moment before returning to his room to meditate and practice. The familiar 3-yang gong flowed through his mind, and Wu Tao began to breathe and exhale, struggling to absorb the thin spiritual energy floating between heaven and earth. As for using spirit stones for cultivation, he is not so wealthy. After meditating for 2 hours, Wu Tao stopped working and started cooking. After finishing his meal and taking a break, Wu Tao took out the forbidden practice spiritual board and prepared to practice. With the alchemist profession bonus, it shouldn't be that difficult anymore. Taking a deep breath, Wu Tao adjusted his breath, clarified his mind, used the 3-yang technique, and controlled his spiritual power. Just as he was about to depict the first level of coolness and restraint, he suddenly felt blessed and stopped, saying, "My way of thinking has fallen into a trap." Describing restraint is like solving a math problem. I need to learn formulas to solve the problem. But now, it is obvious that my understanding of coolness and restraint is not enough, so I blindly depict it. There is no way to not fail. Everything should be done step by step. Learn to walk first, then learn to run. This kind of blessing comes to the soul, and Wu Tao suddenly realizes that it is the talent bonus of the alchemist profession. Previously, the original master lacked talent and didn't even understand such simple principles. First, comprehend. Wu Tao put down the forbidden practice spiritual board, took out a book, and began to study the level 1 cooling prohibition. Perhaps with a natural talent bonus, many questions that the original owner did not understand in the past suddenly had a clear idea, and the composition of the coolness restriction became clearer. Half an hour later, Wu Tao stopped participating in the research and started practicing depiction instead. Just like conducting research in a laboratory, understanding theoretical knowledge requires conducting experiments to demonstrate the level of theoretical achievements. Spiritual power is like a knife. When practicing on the spiritual board, a line falls, twists and turns, carefully carving towards the complete direction of cool prohibition, pop. As soon as his spiritual power was cut off, black smoke rose from his spiritual board. Wu Tao rubbed his forehead, feeling mentally exhausted but extremely uplifted. My direction is indeed correct. Although this portrayal failed, it has made great progress compared to the previous two. A practiced spiritual board can achieve a coolness prohibition degree of 5%. It should be noted that the original owner has not even achieved a progress of 1% after practicing for so many years. Refining Master's professional talent bonus, terrifying like this. Take a break, recover your spirit, and keep working hard. Sure enough, after the second portrayal, he portrayed a 10% coolness restriction. But later on, the greater the mental exhaustion, there is a feeling of exhaustion. Continue meditation to restore spiritual power. Half an hour later. The sky has also darkened, indicating that the day is also about to pass. Wu Tao took out the third forbidden practice spiritual board and prepared for the third characterization exercise. Puff. Pop. Seeing that 13% of the forbidden runes were about to be completed, Wu Tao's heart trembled and his face turned black. A mouthful of fresh blood sprayed out on the spiritual board, and his spiritual power also snapped. The spiritual board was scrapped. But at this moment, Wu Tao didn't care about the spiritual board to report the waste, and black energy was lingering on his face. He quickly activated the 3 yang gong to suppress the evil energy surging inside his body. After a while, Wu Tao's face improved a bit, but the black mark expanded a bit. He felt a moment of fear in his heart and said, I only focus on practicing restraint, but I forget that I am a person with evil spirits. When I consume too much spiritual energy, the evil energy in my body is ready to stir up, and I take the opportunity to counterattack. In the future, I will only practice 2 spiritual boards a day and have 3 months of life, which is enough for me to refine a first-level robe. Having made up his mind, Wu Tao felt hungry in his stomach and quickly cooked a meal. After a simple meal, he felt drowsy again. He lay on a wooden bed with his clothes on, unconsciously falling asleep. I don't know how long I slept, but Wu Tao was awakened by the sound of decadence. He opened his tired eyes and listened to the creaking and moaning sounds from the next door. I remembered the female neighbor in my mind this morning, who was in her early 30s and charming. Chow was the most fond of her. It turned out that she had married a woman and was doing a good deed at this time. How can I sleep without a soundproof formation in the middle of the night? Wu Tao felt tired and sleepy, but the sound of the next door kept coming from his ears, and he couldn't help but feel restless. There is no Xian meet Lingji in this world, which is difficult to solve. Is it difficult? He looked at his hands, but the next second he shook his head. I am a person of evil, my essence is already precious, and I can't help but lose it. Lie down again and continue sleeping. This night, he didn't sleep well, which caused him to wake up the next day feeling lethargic. Wu Tao rubbed his eyes, picked up the tiger seed and prepared to pour out the night incense. As soon as he opened the door, he heard the sound of the neighboring door opening. He turned his head and saw the female neighbor escorting a tall middle-aged man, Xiao, out of the door, probably her husband. The female neighbor turned her head and saw Wu Tao. Her smile froze and she turned around to close the door. Wu Tao didn't look at it anymore. The neighbor's husband was so tall and easy to deal with at first glance. If he encountered a cultivator with a bad temper, it would have caused trouble for nothing, which is not suitable for his current development plan. Quickly retracting his gaze, Wu Tao walked briskly towards the collection of the night fragrance. After coming back, I took a breath of fresh air at the door and went back to my house. His current focus is only on practicing prohibition, refining first-level robes, selling them, buying evil talismans, and dispelling the evil energy on his body. A day passed quickly, and during the first practice of the spiritual board, the progress reached 18%. The second time, it unexpectedly triggered a lucky bonus, directly dragging the progress to 28%. Wu Tao was filled with excitement and joy. If he could trigger a lucky bonus every time, wouldn't he be able to quickly depict the complete coolness restriction? Of course, this is just a thought. He is not European, he is full of European energy. The next day, Wu Tao woke up feeling a headache. Last night, the couple next door had sex for over an hour, and they argued that he couldn't sleep at all. He was already suffering from evil and his health was not good. Lack of sleep was extremely unpleasant for him. I was very anxious and angry in my heart. I really wanted to knock on the door and ask them to be quiet. But thinking of the tall male cultivator, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't bear it. How has he become like this now, poor and cowardly? As usual, Wu Tao opened the door and poured incense into the night. When he returned, he saw the next door and his face was taken aback. The female neighbor sent a short and thin male Xiao out. Isn't her husband the tall male cultivator? Is that what she does? Wu Tao hurriedly avoided looking over there and focused on walking, but this thought couldn't help but flash through his mind. He also thought wildly, I didn't understand the market in my past life, I don't know how to charge. With such thoughts in mind, Wu Tao was about to return to his room when he heard his female neighbor stop him and say, "Friend Dao, please stay." Wu Tao turned his head to look at her and said to himself, "Do you want to do my business? Do you refuse or agree?" The female neighbor's youthful face flashed with a hint of embarrassment and said, "Daoist friend, I've been disturbing Daoist friend these past 2 nights. I'm really sorry. If Daoist friend doesn't mind, come in and I'll give you a free one." Ah, this. Wu Tao was surprised, was it so direct? Moreover, the word free is truly attractive, and my heart began to waver. However, I quickly became determined and shook my head, saying, "No, thank you very much for your kindness." The female neighbor's face darkened as Chi said, "You really dislike our profession." "No, it's not. Wu Tao never despised anyone. In this world, it's not illegal. He has no right to despise anyone. It's hard to say that someone earns more than him." He quickly explained, "I've fallen for evil, and my body doesn't allow it." Upon hearing this, the female neighbor looked delighted and carefully examined Wu Tao. She realized that the person in front of her was a bit thin, and her facial features were quite attractive. Upon closer inspection, Yin Tang turned a bit dark, and indeed looked like a symptom of being possessed by evil. She happily said, "So, my friend is not disgusted, but rather possessed by evil." Looking at the happy female neighbor, Wu Tao couldn't help but sneer and say, "I have fallen for evil. My Taoist friend seems very happy." After speaking, I couldn't help but regret it. In case it made the other party unhappy. Oh, my strength is low, I don't even have confidence. The female neighbor also knew that she had said the wrong thing, and her expression changed, revealing a look of sadness. She weakly said, "No, my Taoist friend is so young and has fallen for evil. I also feel uncomfortable in my heart, so there is a big emotional contrast. However, when I look at my face, I know it is the person with good luck. That's it. I will come back after my Taoist friend drives away the evil, and I will still give my Taoist friend a free one. This acting skill is perfect for green tea." Wu Tao felt that his rank was not up to par, and he was unable to engage in verbal communication with him. He had to be polite for a moment, so he used an excuse to have something to do and turned back to his room. New books for collection. Recommended. Please follow up. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Prohibition of Completion. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 4. Prohibition of Completion. The following days, Wu Tao practiced the three yang technique in the morning and practiced the forbidden depiction in the afternoon. Of course, when going out in the morning and pouring incense back, one can also see the female neighbor smiling and seeing off her customers. Then, the female neighbor will take the initiative to chat. Although Wu Tao didn't like it, out of basic politeness, mainly because he was afraid that the female neighbor would become angry and ask her mistress to beat him up, he had to stop and listen to the female neighbor's polite words of embarrassment and so on. At this moment, Wu Tao often curses inwardly at Xiao Sa Hu Zi, saying sorry during the day but shouting louder and louder at night. He is really one of the best. By the way, after a brief chat over the past few days, the two exchanged names. It was Zhongli who took the initiative to introduce himself, and Wu Tao was forced to politely reveal his name. Zhongli used to work at Li Chuanfang on Luoma Street, but was kicked out of the house by Li Chuanfang because she had offended guests. In order to make a living, she had to start making a living in her residence. Speaking of this, Zhongli often sighs that the scenery is no longer beautiful. The guests of Li Chuanfang are generous, and some of them are stingy and shameless. They even use magic to control them, just to endure for a while longer and make her look up. Liamo Dao Yu, wait a moment. Zhongli quickly called out when she saw Wu Tao about to turn around and enter the room. Wu Tao, in order to be cautious, even if he was not in the territory of Qingling's sect, and even if there was a slight possibility of attracting the attention of Wang Guanshi, he still used a fake name and changed his alias to Liamo. Wu Tao turned around and looked at Zhongli with confusion. Zhong Dao Yu, what else is there? He really didn't want to hear Zhongli talk about her past and glory anymore. She spoke vividly and elaborated on the details. Wu Tao felt restless and agonized. Whenever this happened, he would use an excuse to rush back to his house. Zhongli turned around and returned to the room. She quickly came out, holding a long strip of oiled paper and handing it over, saying, "Here, it's for you." Wu Tao looked at Zhongli and thought to himself that this was a romantic conversation. It's not worth it, so he quickly shook his head and refused. "Friend Dao, you won't be rewarded for your meritorious service." Zhongli chuckled and said, "This is Ning Shenxiang, which is not worth much money. As an apology gift for disturbing you these days, you can light it at night to help sleep. Please bear with me in the future." This. Ning Shenxiang said whether it was expensive or not. A broken spirit stone could buy one, but Wu Tao still didn't want to accept it, mainly because he didn't want to get involved with Zhongli. "Even if I really think about it in the future, I will still pay, buy and sell, and never mix it with emotions." Seeing him hesitating, Zhongli took a step forward, grabbed Wu Tao's hand, placed the oil paper packet in Wu Tao's palm, and then smirked and scratched Wu Tao's palm. Wu Tao only felt a gust of fragrant wind blowing and his palm itched. He had no choice but to hold on to the Ning Shenxiang and quickly took a few steps back, saying, "Okay, thank you very much for Zhang Daoyu's kindness. I have accepted it." Zhongli covered her mouth and her soul-grabbing eyes seemed to overflow with water. Her eyes flowed steadily as she looked at Wu Tao and smiled. "Li Dao Yu, why is your face turning red? Damn it, is this being played with?" Wu Tao felt a little hot on his face, but how could he admit it? He quickly said, "I have something else to do, excuse me for now." After that, he turned around and closed the door. Dong dong dong. Zhongli, however, found it amusing and didn't spare anyone. She knocked on the door and said, "Li Dao Yu, won't you ask me to come in and sit down for a while?" "Stop knocking, I need to catch up on my sleep." This hit Zhongli's heart right, and she smiled and said, "Coincidentally, I also need to catch up on my sleep. Why don't I come with Li Dao Yu? Men and women are not compatible. Please take Zhang Dao Yu seriously, don't make mistakes, and leave quickly." Wu Tao now regrets being forced to take Zhang Li's Ning Xinxiang. Li Daoyu wouldn't be just a child, would he? Wouldn't he? Wouldn't he? Bai's mockery rang out outside the door. Upon hearing this, Wu Tao became furious and blushed. He wished he could go out and have a big fight now to let her know his strength, but he quickly calmed down and remained silent, so as not to be deceived. Li Daoyu, I'm going to bed now. The sound of footsteps outside the door followed by the sound of the door closing. Wu Tao sat in a chair, his mind gradually calmed down, and he said with hatred, "You're really one of the best." He opened the oiled paper bag and saw 10 Ningxian fragrances lying quietly inside. As for Zhongli, he didn't want to talk much and only felt complicated. "I don't want to, after dispelling the evil energy in my body, I will work hard to earn spiritual stones and move to a better place." Wu Tao abandoned his distractions and began practicing the 3-yang technique. In the blink of an eye, he had been living in Xinda Lane for 10 days. With Ning Xinxiang and his homemade cotton earplugs, he could finally sleep better at night. On the 5th day, while practicing the depiction, 3 lucky bonuses were triggered, and the coolness ban was finally successfully portrayed. At this point, he still had 9 forbidden practice spiritual boards left, so he didn't rush to refine the robe because the robe, which mainly functions as a first-level cooling forbidden, had no selling point. As a casual cultivator, he knew he would rather focus on hot topics and buy this thing. So I prepared to practice depicting the Prohibition of rapid winds. The Gale Prohibition is a first-level, second-level Prohibition, which is much more difficult than the first-level, cooling Prohibition. It is relatively not so easy to comprehend. When it comes to practicing and portraying, the progress is also much slower than the cool Prohibition. Wu Tao estimated that these 9 practice spirit boards couldn't withstand the depiction of the Prohibition of the wind, but fortunately he still had a spirit stone on him, so he could buy another 20 Prohibition practiced spirit boards. Another issue is that as time goes by, the yin and evil energy in his body spreads more widely, requiring more spiritual energy and spirit to resist. He can only practice forbidden depictions once a day, which makes it difficult to sustain. Also due to the influence of evil, he practiced the 3-yang gong day by day, but instead of making any progress, he regressed. After meditating for 2 hours, Wu Tao stopped cooking and filled his stomach before speaking. After the lunch break, I started practicing depicting the Prohibition of strong winds. The first and second level gust control is more complex than the first and first level cool control, consuming more spiritual energy and energy. When portrayed, one must be more careful and slow in speed. 15 minutes later, as the spiritual energy became unstable, the supply of spiritual energy was interrupted, and the forbidden runes were broken. The spiritual board immediately emitted white smoke and was declared scrapped. The Gale ban has been reduced to 3/10. I hope to trigger a few more lucky bonuses. There are still 3 blocks left for the ban practice spiritual board, so I need to take a break and go to the local market to buy one. Wu Tao put down the scrapped spiritual tablet, vigorously pressed his swollen forehead, stood up and paced in the cabin, soothing his lower limbs. After resting for a moment, Wu Tao got up and headed to Fengshe. When he arrived in the western outer city, it was his first time coming to the neighborhood market. It was said to be a neighborhood market, but in fact, it was similar to the bustling rural market in his previous life, far from the bustling shopping malls in big cities. Walking on the street, passing by a shop. Yuan Yu Talisman Pavilion. Wu Tao looked up at the vermilion gilded plaque, pondered for a moment, and walked in. There were cultivators in the pavilion who were selecting talismans. Wu Tao looked at them one by one and finally stopped in front of the broken evil talisman, looking at the clear price tag on it. 20 inferior spirit stones. A 1-time talisman, worth 20 lower grade spirit stones, is very expensive for Wu Tao. If he continues to mine, he will have to eat or drink for 9 months to save it. No wonder in this world of cultivating immortals, everyone wants to embark on the path of cultivating the 4 arts of immortality. Wu Tao gave a reluctant glance and left the Yuanyu Talisman Pavilion while the staff didn't speak up. At dusk, Wu Tao returned to the cabin holding 20 forbidden practice spiritual tablets, and from then on, he had no more spiritual stones on his body. There are less than 10 broken spirit stones left. Poor to the point of jingling. Since Wu Tao bought the forbidden practice spiritual board from the local market, he has resumed his usual regular life, and day by day, he is unaware of the passing. In the blink of an eye, another 14 days passed. Wu Tao sat cross-legged on the bed, took a deep breath, then abandoned his distractions, adjusted his state, and began to activate his spiritual energy, landing on the spiritual board in an orderly manner. At this point, Wu Tao's spiritual control had become extremely precise. With the movement of his mind, the spiritual energy gradually formed lines on the spiritual board, interweaving them and revealing the mysterious runes. As it was about to end, suddenly Wu Tao muttered in his heart that it was terrible. Because his spiritual energy is a bit unstable. To fail. At this moment, a mechanical sound sounded in my ears. You have triggered the alchemist's lucky skill, luck bonus. 50%, the unstable spiritual energy immediately stabilized, and Wu Tao quickly tightened his mind and focused on the spiritual board. Who? As the final stroke came to an end, Wu Tao let out a long breath of turbid air, with a happy expression on his face. He looked at the spiritual board in his hand, and a complete gust of wind control was completed, with a slight spiritual energy lingering around. At this moment, luck bonus was triggered, otherwise it would have failed. 24 days later, we finally succeeded in portraying the first and second level of the Gale control. Next, we need to make sufficient preparations to truly enter practical combat and refine the robe. Thinking of this, Wu Tao opened his personal file that had not been opened for a long time. Name: Wu Tao, life expectancy 25/25, remaining 6 days in February, realm. Gas refining level 2, practice. 3 Yang Gong Qi refining chapter, level 2. 55%, spells. Fireball beginner, 60%, cleansing beginner, 16%, magic. Nun, main occupation. Alchemist. Control mastery. Level 1 cooling control, level 1 and level 2 gale control. Sub-profession. Physical education. Blank, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Refining. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Refining. The next morning, Wu Tao woke up and his spirit was unprecedentedly good. Perhaps it was the joy brought by the successful portrayal of the gust control yesterday that made everyone relax. The quality of sleep was excellent, and at night, I didn't even hear the beautiful sound of the next door. After a brief wash, he picked up the tiger seed and went to pour out the night fragrance. Opening the door, just a few steps away, he heard the familiar clang of the door from the next door. He didn't have to turn back to know that the female neighbor must have gone out to see off guests. Thinking like this, I heard Zhongxie shouting, "Li Daoyu, wait for me." Wu Tao turned around and saw Zhongxie lock the door. He bent down and ran towards him with a tiger in his hand. He was frightened and quickly moved away, saying, "Please slow down and don't spill it on me." However, Zhongxie didn't listen and stood still in front of him, her chest fluctuating. She chuckled and said, "I am a fairy, and even my feces and urine are fragrant." Wu Tao was powerless to refute this statement. He couldn't have really smelled the tiger son of Zhongxie just to prove the correctness of his statement. He didn't even want to look at it. In the future, you must find a fairy who doesn't know how to defecate as a Taoist couple. Wu Tao secretly swore in his heart. However, Zhongxie seemed to have no guests last night, no wonder he slept so soundly. Zhongxie saw his gaze towards her own door, and her heart lit up as she said, "Don't look, there's no one inside. Li Dao, you know, the people living in Xinda Lane are all poor. Even if their bodies can handle it, their wallets can't handle it. Okay, I'm also a poor ghost. Wu Tao stopped talking and walked forward with a tiger in his hand. Zhongli walked side by side with Wu Tao, like a machine gun, telling him everything he wanted, but Wu Tao didn't really want to hear it, if he had a choice. Along the way, Zhongli was speaking alone, while Wu Tao remained silent. Hey, crossing the world of cultivating immortals, as a cultivator, going to defecate with another female cultivator, what's this called? Wu Tao felt a pain in his heart and couldn't express it. This journey is simply terrible. After pouring the night incense, on the way back, Wu Tao deliberately quickened his pace. Zhongli was heartless, as if not realizing that Wu Tao had become impatient. He continued to happily talk about her glorious deeds in Lichuanfang. I finally got home. Seeing his residence, Wu Tao breathed a sigh of relief and said to Zhongli, Zhang Daoyu, I'll go back to the house to practice first. After speaking, without waiting for Zhongli to answer, Wu Tao opened and closed the door in one go. Zhongli stood between her own door and Wu Tao's door, watching as Wu Tao's door closed. She stopped talking, but her face did not show any displeasure. She turned her head back to her own room. Wu Tao returned to the room, dispelling Zhongli's dense words like bees along the way, adjusting his mentality, and starting to sit cross-legged on the bed, practicing the three yang gong. Now that you have fallen into evil, if you don't advance in the three yang gong, you will retreat. Moreover, you cannot fall for a day, otherwise your strength will decline and the evil energy will be more likely to spread. After practicing for an hour, Wu Tao stopped. After completing the depiction of the Gale Prohibition, it is theoretically possible to immediately refine the robe. But he was not in a hurry to refine, but used 2 days to adjust his own state to the best before officially refining the work. The saying goes, sharpening a knife does not hinder the chopping of firewood. These past few days, apart from practicing the three yang technique in the morning, he did nothing but go to the local market to replenish his food midway. He finished the rice and dried meat he had stored at home. After replenishing the food, there were only 6 broken spirit stones left on the body. Starting to refine the robe tomorrow, get a good night's sleep tonight. It is worth mentioning that the next door was very quiet these 2 nights. If it were quiet for a few more days, Wu Tao would sleep soundly and be in good spirits, which would be of great benefit to the refining of robes. That night, Wu Tao fell asleep very early. When he thought he could sleep until dawn, he was awakened again at some point. There are guests next door. Miscalculated. The Ning Shenxiang given by Zhongli has long been used up. Wu Tao frowned, feeling that his luck was not good and his emotions couldn't help but become emotional. He felt that it was his own problem. If he had traveled to a wealthy and powerful cultivator, he naturally wouldn't have these troubles. It can be seen that time travel is like reincarnation, it depends on fate. Worried for a while, Wu Tao forced himself to sleep no matter what, thinking of refining his robe tomorrow. The next day, Wu Tao rubbed his drowsy forehead to wake himself up. As expected, Yi Xiang saw Zhongli open the door to see off the guests. He sighed in his heart and continued walking forward. When he returned, Zhongli still had to hold him to talk, and Wu Tao took an excuse to go back to the house. After taking a cold shower and feeling much clearer, Wu Tao wore a dry robe and took out the materials for refining the robe. Spark Stone. First level Junior Demon Silk. He looked at the spark stones and demon silk in front of him and calculated in his heart, what I want to refine now is a first level and second level robe, which functions as a fast wind. According to the refining requirements, I need 3 spark stones and 1 pound of demon silk. The materials left by the original owner can be refined twice. In that case, I can only fail once. There are still 4 days left, and it's time to pay the rent. I owe the dental butler 4 spiritual stones, plus this month's rent of 2, and various miscellaneous expenses. I have to pay 6 inferior spiritual stones and 15 broken spiritual stones. The market price for first and second level robes is 12 to 15 inferior spiritual stones. Can only fail once. To be honest, although Wu Tao has a bonus for his main profession as an alchemist, he is still worried. If he fails to refine twice, he will definitely be dragged away by the dental firm as a laborer to offset his debt. Even if he were to be driven away, he would not be able to escape the fate of the evil energy spreading and his whole body dying in 2 months. Feeling uneasy, the robe still needs to be refined. Wu Tao dug out a basement in the center of the room and temporarily used it as a refining room, which was the practice of the poor. I heard that the alchemists in the sect have dedicated alchemy rooms and a supply of underground fire. These current Wu Tao dare not think about it. Prepare well. Wu Tao took out the book, The Refining Methods and 5 Prohibitions of the First-Rank Robe, and carefully recorded the steps and precautions of refining. After fully remembering, Wu Tao adjusted his mindset, clarified his mind, and officially began refining. 2 spark stones fell into the underground hall and were ignited by the spiritual energy of the 3 yang gong. A faint flame shone on Wu Tao's face, and he took the previously divided kilogram of demon silk and controlled it with spiritual energy. At this moment, the demonic silk is still in a cocoon state. Under the control of Wu Tao's spiritual energy, it is suspended on the underground hall. In the flames of the starfire stone, the demonic silk becomes loose one by one. Wu Tao immediately separated his mind and used his spiritual energy to peel off the cocoon, peeling off the demonic silk one by one. He also had to be careful of the temperature of the spark stones. If the temperature was too high, the demonic silk would be burned off. If the temperature is low, it is not possible to peel off the demonic silk. Before long, Wu Tao's forehead began to sweat. The process of peeling off the demonic silk was far more difficult than he had imagined. This is just the first step. Even if it is difficult, Wu Tao dare not relax his mind. Time slowly passed, and the cocoons of the demonic silk turned into threads suspended. When the demonic silk of the last cocoon was completely peeled off, Wu Tao felt a sigh of relief in his heart. Next, the second step is to weave the demon silk into a fabric, then use spiritual power as a shuttle, thread needles and threads, and weave it into the shape of a robe. This step is much simpler than the first one. Wu Tao remained steadfast in his spirit and proceeded seamlessly with this second step, weaving back and forth one demon silk after another. As time passed, his hem, sleeves, and collar gradually began to take shape. In the end, a robe resembling a long-sleeved shirt was formed. The second step is completed, and the most difficult one is the third step, which is the final step. Wu Tao felt soaked all over his body, and his essence and spirit were also greatly depleted. However, the refining process must be completed in one go, otherwise it would fail. This is also the difficulty of the craft industry as an alchemist. The final step is to depict the complete prohibition of the gust onto every demonic silk on the robe, without missing a single one, otherwise the prohibition of the gust will be incomplete and unable to be triggered. This is the most difficult step. Wu Tao threw down another spark stone and entered the underground hall. The flames ignited and the temperature significantly increased. It was at this moment that he was not anxious or impatient, but carefully portrayed the prohibition. A drop of sweat left from the eyebrows and fell into the eyes. Wu Tao dared not blink, afraid of failure. The fact is, as he became more and more afraid of something, Wu Tao felt his spirit stagnate. He only heard a loud bang, and his stroke became heavy. He directly broke off the previous forbidden rune, causing the entire prohibition to lose its integrity and suddenly collapse. Failed. The discarded robe fell on the spark stone and burned. Wu Tao fell backwards and lay directly on the ground, his whole body soaked in cold sweat, his spirit very weak, unwilling to think about anything. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Robe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Robe. It took a long time for Wu Tao to recover from his failure and his emotions slightly perked up. Failure is the mother of success. Failure is also an experience. One should learn to find areas for improvement from failure, and increase the chances of success for the next refining. Wu Tao changed his clothes and sat by the side of the underground hall. At this point, the spark stones had already burned out. In fact, the first refining would fail. He had already done psychological construction before and felt that he could face this result. But he is too poor. The cost of failure is too high, which still makes him feel heartbroken. Although the difference between carving prohibitions in the practice of forbidden spiritual boards and depicting prohibitions during the refining process can be almost negligible, there is still a slight difference. The depiction of prohibitions during the refining process is more delicate than in the practice of forbidden spiritual boards, and the control of spiritual energy is more precise. No wonder it's said that the masters of the 4 arts of cultivating immortals are all created with resources. Only through repeated trial and error can we embark on the path of success. Without resource support, it is difficult to go far. I have a talent for alchemists, but I can't rely solely on this. I need to work harder and gain more understanding in order to reduce the cost of trial and error. There are only 4 spark stones left and 1 pound of demon silk left. There is only one chance left, only success is allowed, and failure is not allowed. I have consumed too much essence and spirit today, so I can only refine it tomorrow. After summarizing, Wu Tao rubbed his slightly swollen forehead and muttered to himself, "Last night's sleep quality was extremely poor, and my mental state was a bit worse. If the next door didn't make a fuss tonight, my spirit would be better. Would it be closer to success? Why not go and beg Zhongxie?" As soon as this thought flashed through, Wu Tao extinguished it and shook his head repeatedly. "When they open the door for business, I am just neighbors and our friendship is shallow. What is the reason to ask them to close for a day? Don't be fooled by her talkative nature, but in case." Wu Tao is also afraid of encountering obstacles and lacks spiritual stones. Living in a location with poor infrastructure, these troubles can only be endured. Ultimately, it's all about poverty. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. It was already morning, and Wu Tao's stomach began to signal hunger. He got up to cook, and after eating, he went to bed and sat down, using the 3 yang gong to absorb the thin spiritual energy floating between heaven and earth and restore his own state. After meditating for 2 hours, he finally regained his essence and energy. At this moment, he couldn't help but reminisce about the time when the original owner had not fallen into evil. At that time, he was still working as a miner. Although life was difficult, sometimes he could still use spiritual stones to cultivate. If using spirit stones, it can recover in half an hour. If you miss the past, then it must be that you are not doing well now. Wu Tao sighed again and said, "I heard that the disciples of Qingling Sect's Wuchuan Mountain are all trained with elixirs, and the high-level ones directly gnaw on their spiritual veins. I don't know when I can also gnaw on their spiritual veins." At this moment, Wu Tao's mentality was like a poor man speculating whether the emperor would use a gold hoe or a silver hoe to cultivate the land. It is almost dusk now. Refining the robe in the morning, restoring the state in the afternoon, and the day passed. Dry rice. After finishing his meal, Wu Tao took out the book, The Refining Methods and 5 Prohibitions of the First-Rank Robe, and read it by candlelight for half an hour, even though he had already memorized it proficiently. It was time to go to bed, and Wu Tao had just laid down and half sat up, his face inexplicably conflicted. "Why don't you go and beg Zhongxie? I only have one chance to refine tomorrow. If I don't succeed, I won't be able to survive this deadly ordeal. It's about life and death, even if I hit a wall. If I succeed, I'll sleep well, my spirit will improve, and a little more success rate may save my life." In his inner struggle, after a moment, Wu Tao woke up, put on his shoes, got up, opened the door, and thought to himself, "Perhaps I can do this." Coming out to Zhongxi's doorstep, there was a faint candlelight inside. It was still early, and Zhongxi had not opened the door for business yet. Taking a deep breath, Wu Tao raised his hand and knocked on the door. Quickly, footsteps rang out inside the room, the door opened, and Zhongli saw Wu Tao with a slight shock on her face. However, she knew that Wu Tao was in an evil state and would not come to visit her business. Even if she visits, she dare not take it. So, Zhongli asked, "Li Daoyu, what's up?" Wu Tao looked at Zhongli, who was wearing obscene clothes and pants, and hesitated for a while before saying, "Zhang Daoyu, do you still keep the promise you made last time?" "Promise, what promise?" Zhongli couldn't remember for a moment. Wu Tao said directly, "As Zhang Daoyu said last time, after I eliminate the evil, let me do it for free once. It's better to choose a day than to collide with it. It's better to do it tonight." After speaking, he breathed a clear sigh of relief in his heart. Upon hearing this, Zhongli widened her eyes and cursed in anger for a while, "You want me to die? You are hiding evil now. Tonight, I see that evil energy has entered your mind, and you are all confused. Get lost." "I'm about to push Wu Tao." Wu Tao didn't understand what he was saying and explained, "Zhang Daoyu, you misunderstood. I didn't mean that." "That's not what you mean, then what do you mean?" Zhongli stopped pushing him, hugged his chest with both hands, and rolled her eyes to look at him. "What I mean is, don't open the door to pick me up tonight, and then consider it as picking me up tonight. Of course, I won't really have to do it with you. In short, that promise can be considered fulfilled by Zhang Daoyu." Wu Tao explained with some effort. Zhongli understood and stared at Wu Tao for a long time. Seeing a black border around Wu Tao's eyes, she smiled and said, "I'm scared to death if I don't explain it earlier." Okay, I understand. You go back." Wu Tao quickly bent down to thank him, "Thank you very much, Zhang Daoyu. I won't say thank you for your great kindness. Zhongli is a believer." That night, she hung up a sign that closed for the whole night, allowing Wu Tao to have a good sleep. When he woke up at dawn, his energy were full, and his dark circles under his eyes disappeared. When Daoxiang returned, she thanked Zhongli again. Wu Tao took a shower in the bathroom, washed away all his bad luck, changed into dry clothes, and sat by the side of the basement. All work is ready. Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, Tathagata Buddha, Primordial Heavenly Venerable, Supreme Elder, Master of the Tongtian sect, Satan, Odin, Zeus. Please bless me with success. Let's get started. Praying to the known gods and Buddhas in the sky, Wu Tao threw 2 spark stones into the underground hall, ignited the spiritual energy of the 3 yang gong, took the remaining pound of demon silk cocoon in his hand, and began to pluck and peel it. He succeeded in both the first and second steps yesterday, with his experience there. However, Wu Tao still dared not be careless and carefully controlled his spiritual energy and heat. Time quietly passed through the tense refining work, with spiritual energy flowing like a shuttle. The shape of the robe caught Wu Tao's eye. The last step is to depict the prohibition. Yesterday was a failure in this step, and this time we must remain stable. Wu Tao adjusted his mentality, no longer thinking about failure, afraid of feeling pressure in his heart. His spiritual energy was like a knife, carved on the robe with each knife, and the progress of the rapid wind control gradually drew closer. You have triggered the lucky skill of the refining master profession, with a lucky bonus of 50%. Heaven help me too. Wu Tao was overjoyed, his spirit remained steadfast, and his hands became even more stable. As the last restriction fell, a complete gust restriction appeared on his robe in an instant. Rong. Refining. Hee. With 3 soft cheers falling, the prohibition of the strong wind fell on the robe, and the 2 merged seamlessly. A spiritual light flashed past, quickly becoming introverted again. Wu Tao was overjoyed as he took a photo of the robe and couldn't help but laugh. Finally, it's done. The first and second level wind robe. Thank you to yourself, thank you to the alchemist profession, thank you Zhongli. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Setting up a stall. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 7 Setting up a stall. So now, can I be considered an alchemist? Inside the cabin, Wu Tao looked at the first and second level wind robe in his hand, feeling excited, and joyful. If there was a woman by his side, he would definitely pick it up and spin around a few times. Unfortunately, a single dog can only perform a few ritualistic jumps on its own, slowly digesting all the excitement and joy. I have no friends in this life. If I had achieved such success in my past life, I would have pulled up my good brother's stalls and had a few boxes to drink. First, it was to celebrate, and second, it was a casual show-off. Wu Tao stroked the delicate white robe with both hands, thinking of Zhongli in his mind. He had just wanted to go to Zhongli and be proud, but the thought was instantly extinguished. The cultivation world is not like a rule of law society in the past. We should learn to act low-key and quietly make money. Give it a try. The robe has been successfully refined, but quality control also needs to grasp it. In the future, he will have to rely on the profession of an alchemist, and he cannot smash his own signboard. Wu Tao has been a person of 2 generations, both rising from a humble age and deeply understanding the importance of integrity. The function of the robe is single, with only one first level and second level gust prohibition, combined with being handcrafted by him. He is familiar with the structure of this prohibition, and after 15 minutes, he will refine the prohibition and imprint his own spiritual imprint. He put on his robe and said, "Make do with the experiment in this room." He considered that his current cultivation was low, and he was a novice in the second level of qi refining. He only knew one attack spell, Fireball, which he had not yet mastered, so he took a first-level junior robe to experiment outside. That's too much for one's fortune. If bad people see and rob him, or even worse, they will directly kill and rob him, then they can only complain to the Prince of Yen. Inspired by spiritual power, the fast wind in the robe was restrained, and the robe immediately emitted a layer of firefly-like magic light. Wu Tao's body moved like the wind, as if carrying the wind, circling in this small room. After 2 laps, Wu Tao stopped and concluded, the prohibition is complete, the stimulation time is fast, about 3 seconds, the spiritual power is coherent, the speed has doubled, and the quality is qualified. Wu Tao carefully took off and removed the spiritual imprint he had left behind. Then, he wrapped the raw material with a clean cloth and placed it under the bed, intending to go to the local market to sell it tomorrow. I heard that the cheapest stall in the neighborhood costs 30 pieces of spirit stones a day. I only have 6 pieces of spirit stones on me now. I can only give up my face and borrow them from Zhongli. Wu Tao is a bit worried that Zhongli is unwilling to borrow. After all, not borrowing is duty, borrowing is affection. He believed that his friendship with Zhongli was not yet at the point where he could borrow money. There's nothing he can do. Who said he only knows Zhongli? Kneeling down to call mom also requires borrowing. The next morning, Wu Tao came back from pouring out the tiger seed and knocked at Zhongli's door. Last night, Zhongli didn't have any guests coming. Not long after, the door opened and Zhongli looked at him drowsily, still feeling a bit tired of waking up and saying, "What's up with you?" "I'm tired here." Wu Tao struggled in his heart for a moment before finally uttering his words of borrowing money. He was also worried that Zhongli would not trust him, so he quickly said, "Zhong Daoyu, don't worry, I will repay you as promised no later than 2 days." Zhongli looked at his anxious face, sweating profusely, without saying a word, as if pondering. After a moment, she asked, "How much do you borrow?" Wu Tao was overjoyed and hurriedly said, 60 broken spirit stones. Zhongli turned around, and Wu Tao listened to the sound of broken spirit stones colliding inside the room. Soon, Zhongli returned, holding a money bag and handing it to Wu Tao, saying, "Here are 100 broken spirit stones. Li Dao Yu, take them first for emergency response." I really borrowed it. Wu Tao took the money bag and felt immensely grateful in his heart. Then he said seriously, Zhang Daoyu, thank you for your great kindness. You have saved my life. Zhang Li yawned, waved her hand, and said nonchalantly, it's not as serious as you said. Alright, I'll go back to sleep first. After speaking, I closed the door on my own. Wu Tao held the money bag in his hand and made a secret determination in his heart. He wanted to keep this feeling of borrowing money in mind. After all, there are very few people in this world who are willing to lend you money. Light Body Talisman, 1 lower grade spirit stone with 4 pieces. The soundproof array offers a great 10-year discount for guests. It comes with a door-to-door installation and a 3-year warranty, with only 50 pieces of inferior spirit stones. The discount is only available for 3 days. If you miss 3 days, you will be restored to the original price of 68 yuan for the lower grade spirit stone. Please hurry up and install it. The Animal Skin Rune Paper Workshop has gone bankrupt. The Animal Skin Rune Paper Workshop has gone bankrupt. Without spirit stones, our hired workers are pitiful. We can only use Animal Sin Talisman paper to offset our wages. 20 pieces of inferior spirit stones, cost price, bleeding price. Lingmi, top quality Lingmi, the newly produced Yoxiang No. 3 this year, is very fragrant. You don't need to cook, just eat 3 bowls. Uncle, how do you sell Lingmi? This little Taoist friend, it's not me bragging. I'm a spiritual rice, but it's newly cultivated by Zhou Tiannong, a spiritual planter such as Wuchuan Mountain Armor, and Master Zhou this year. It's Yoxiang No. 3, and it smells great when cooked. A piece of inferior spiritual stone weighs 30 pounds. If you don't believe it, you see, this is my Lingji Fu certificate. The Lingji Hall on Wuchuan Mountain has been stamped with a seal, and these Lingmi have been taken care of by me through hard work. Credit guarantee. Ling Jifu, who sells Lingmi, opened a certificate and handed it to Wu Tao for review. Wu Tao had not seen the certificate of Ling Jifu, but was curious. He took it over and saw it written, Han Taizhu passed the Lingji Fu exam at Wuchuan Mountain Lingji Hall and was evaluated as a Ding level Lingji Fu. This certificate is hereby issued as proof. There is indeed a red seal from the Lingji Hall of Wuchuan Mountain in the lower right corner, which cannot be fake. You see, Ding Lingji Fu, I'm amazing. Han Taizhu pointed to the Ding Lingji Fu on the certificate and said to Wu Tao, with a proud expression on his face. Uncle is amazing. Wu Tao returned the certificate to Han Taizhu and generously gave him a thumbs up. The first task in society is not to be stingy with praising others, praising them without spending money, and making them happy. Why not do it? Wu Tao followed Han Taizhu's heart and immediately praised him, saying, Little Taoist friend, I'll give you an extra pound just for you, big thumb. After speaking, I will weigh the Lingmi to Wu Tao. Wu Tao quickly grabbed Han Taizhu's arm and said in a dilemma, Uncle, I'm sorry, I don't have any money now. When I have money, I will definitely buy your Lingmi. Han Taizhu didn't feel disappointed, but said generously, okay, then uncle wishes you wealth and more spiritual stones. Wu Tao bid farewell to Han Taizhu and went to the rental office in Fengshe. This city was also built by disciples of Wuchuan Mountain. If you set up a stall here, you have to go to the office to obtain a rental certificate. If you set up a stall without permission, the inspector will not only impose a heavy punishment, but also cancel your residence qualification in the western outer city. Wu Tao has already learned how to do anything and will investigate carefully before taking action, which can save a lot of trouble. When I arrived at the rental office in Fengshe, there were only 2 windows, but there were many cultivators who wanted to rent stalls. There were 2 long queues, and no one dared to cut in at the official office of Wuchuan Mountain. Wu Tao also lined up honestly. 3/4 of an hour later, we arrived at Wu Tao. Hello, sir. I want to rent a booth, Wu Tao said with a smile on his face and a friendly tone. What are you selling? The robe. The robe. The staff of the office finally looked up at Wu Tao upon hearing these 2 words and said, sure, which district to rent. Do you have any vouchers? If so, just bring them. Vouchers. Wu Tao was puzzled and said, Sir, I haven't heard that renting a booth requires proof, have I? The first time. Seeing Wu Tao nod, the cultivator in the office said, You don't know the reliable certificate for renting a booth to receive a rental discount. Selling the Lingmi Na Lingji Fu certificate can reduce the booth rental fee by 10%. If you sell the robe and have a certified alchemist certificate from Wuchuan Mountain Refining Hall, you can reduce the rental fee by 20% and also reduce the transaction tax by 10%. Thank you for your answer, sir. I don't have any credentials. Wu Tao really didn't know about this, thinking about whether to go to Wuchuan Mountain to get a certificate in the future. It would be a bit more cost-effective. I just don't know if it's difficult to test. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Transactions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Transactions. Where is booth 69 in Ding District? Wu Tao shuttled through the Ding District of Fengshe, holding a stall rental certificate. He spent 60 broken spirit stones to rent a stall for 2 days. The neighborhood is too big, it's a bit difficult to find. Little Taoist, what are you looking for? At this moment, Wu Tao heard Han Tieju's voice. He looked up and indeed saw Han Taiju standing on his Lingmi stall. It turned out that he had found this place unconsciously. Wu Tao stepped forward and said, Uncle Han, I'm looking for a stall at number 69, Ding District. Look. As he spoke, he showed Han Taiju the rental voucher for the booth. Han Taiju took a closer look and immediately felt happy. He smiled and said, Little Taoist friend, isn't this a coincidence? Number 69 in Ding District is on my left, and I am number 70 in Ding District. Wu Tao looked at the vacant booth on the left side of Han Taiju and indeed saw a small plaque engraved with number 69 Ding District. This sign is too small, right? No wonder it's so hard to find. Wu Tao rose, turned to Han Taiju and thanked him, Thank you, Uncle Han, or I'll find it again. Han Taiju smiled foolishly and waved his hand, saying, You're welcome. By the way, what do you sell at your stall? Wu Tao came to the booth, took off the backpack behind him, placed a piece of cloth, carefully placed the robe, and then took out a wooden sign that had been written beforehand. Pointing at the sign, he said to Han Taiju, Uncle Han, take a look. Han Taiju looked at the wooden sign and saw a line of words written crookedly on it. First level and second level wind robe, priced at 15 lower grade spirit stones. You're selling robes, so you're so obedient. It's much more valuable than my Lingmi. Little Taoist, why don't you go to Zone A or Zone B to sell? There are more people there. Wu Tao and Haoran said, Uncle Han, I'm not feeling shy. Besides, I think this place is quite nice. Uncle, how do you sell this Lingmi? Han Taiju still had to talk to Wu Tao. A casual repairman came up to inquire about the price, and Han Taiju quickly greeted the customer. Wu Tao took out a futon, sat cross-legged on it, and looked at the street. It was all selling groceries, and he was the only one selling robes. No one competes with me, isn't it selling quickly? He looked at the cultivators coming and going on the street, thinking happily in his heart. 2 days, we must sell it. In just 2 days, it's time for the dental firm to collect rent. If it's not sold and there's no spiritual stone to pay rent, there won't even be a place to stay. It's not very safe outside the city. It's not that there are many wild beasts. Sometimes, cultivators are even more terrifying than beasts. Wu Tao watched as the scattered cultivators walked by one. Some of them glanced at Wu Tao's booth, but when they saw the price tag on the wooden sign, they immediately retreated and walked away. 15 lower grade spirit stones are indeed more expensive than just a little for lower level casual cultivators. The original owner was mining in the Qingling sect, and only 3 spiritual stones were found in a month. However, This first and second level robe would take 5 months to buy without eating or drinking. Among the 4 skills of cultivating immortals, magical tools, elixirs, and formations are the most expensive because of their high cost. However, talismans are cheaper, have lower costs, and are mostly disposable. He only succeeded in refining this robe once after refining it twice, consuming 6 spark stones and 2 pounds of demon silk. The cost price is 5 lower grade spirit stones, and selling them for 15 yuan can be said to be completely inexpensive. Besides, the cost also includes booth fees, and successful transactions also require transaction taxes. This doesn't even include labor costs. Han Taizhu made a deal and received 100 broken spirit stones. His face was filled with joy as he turned to Wu Tao and said, "I don't know what your name is, Taoist." Liamo. Wu Tao still used a pseudonym. Although Steward Wang doesn't care about him, if he hears the news that he is still alive one day, it is difficult to guarantee that there will be a desire to kill people and silence them, so it is still better to be stable. Han Taizhu smiled and said, "Liamo, a good name. Let me call you Li Xiaoyu." Li Xiaoyu, this robe. I don't know what it is. Ah, sorry. I shouldn't have inquired. This move by Han Taizhu is a taboo in the cultivation world. Do not easily inquire about the privacy of others. Even if Wu Tao's robe is not from a legitimate source, it is not something he can inquire about. If you encounter someone who is not easy to get along with and secretly hold a grudge against you, and then find an opportunity to be you later, you will regret it. This has happened before. Wu Tao was not angry, he just said it was okay and then exposed it. As for what they say is self-refining, they haven't become so familiar with Han Taizhu yet. A day passed quickly, and at sunset, the market was closed. Wu Tao did not successfully sell his robe, and there were no people asking. On the other hand, Han Taizhu around him sold 90 kilograms of lingmi and earned 3 inferior lingshire, making everyone happy. Wu Tao looked so envious. Staying at the stall for a day, exhausted both physically and mentally, Wu Tao tidied up his stall, bid farewell to Han Taizhu, and then returned to his residence. When he returned, he fell asleep and didn't even have the mood to eat dinner. The next morning, Wu Tao washed his face with cold water, and when he saw himself in the basin, the yin tang turned black, which was already very obvious. Is it because my printing hall turned black that I didn't attract customers? Thinking of this, he took out a long black cloth and covered his forehead before coming to the neighborhood to set up a stall. Who? Taking a long breath, Wu Tao secretly cheered himself up and dispelled the gloom in his heart. If the vendor had a bad face, no guests would have come forward to inquire. Li Xiaoyu, don't worry, doing business is like this. I haven't sold a pound of lingmi for 3 or 4 days before. Han Taizhu comforted Wu Tao when he heard him sigh. Thank you very much, Uncle Han, for your concern. However, where did Han Taizhu know his difficulties? The morning passed quickly, and someone was pushing a small wooden cart to sell lunch. Wu Tao was hungry and spent a broken spirit stone selling a lunch, 1 meat and 1 vegetable. He exclaimed in his heart that it was expensive, giving him a feeling of eating boxed meals on a train in his past life. After lunch, Wu Tao perked himself up and looked at the passers-by. Whenever anyone glanced at his sign a few times, he would ask if he needed a robe. Hard work pays off to those who have a heart. After asking about 10 people, a middle-aged man dressed up as a casual cultivator finally approached and asked, "Your robe, which costs 15 lower-grade spirit stones, is too expensive. Can you reduce it a bit?" Wu Tao smiled and said, "Friend Dao, this is the first and second level wind robe. It's necessary. If there's less, I'll lose money." Middle-aged Master Sancho said, "There are only 4 pieces of light body talismans and 1 lower-grade spirit stone, which is even faster than this wind robe." Wu Tao's face froze and he patiently explained, "Friend Dao, the light body talisman is disposable. You can't even buy 4 out of 15 spirit stones. Although it's faster than my robe is not disposable and can be used for a long time. Middle-aged Sancho said, so how did you get this robe? If it's not from the right way, if it's found by the former master, then you'll lose your life. Wu Tao took the robe and whispered, Friend Dao, please rest assured. Look, this robe is brand new and not from an improper origin, but has been refined by me. Did you refine it? A hint of shock flashed on middle-aged Sancho's face, but he quickly concealed it. The shock was not suitable for bargaining. Then you can show me the alchemist certificate certified by the Wuchuan Mountain Refining Hall. Ah! This really stumped Wu Tao, he didn't. Upon seeing this, the middle-aged casual cultivator immediately exclaimed with joy, How can I believe that you have refined it without a certificate of alchemist? And how can I believe in your quality? I see that the Taoist friend is sincere in selling it, and I am also sincere in buying it. It's a fixed price, 13 lower-grade spirit stones, and we can make a deal. 13 yuan, pay 6 yuan for rent, return 1 yuan to Zhongxie, pay 10% of the transaction tax, 1 and 30 broken spirit stones, and there are still. With a quick calculation in his heart, Wu Tao shook his head and said, Friend Dao, it's really not possible. Alright, if you're not sincere about selling, then goodbye. The middle-aged monk said and left without hesitation. I was pinched. Once upon a time, he had also pinched someone else like this. Wu Tao quickly grabbed his hand and said, Alright, if you really want to buy it, don't say that 13 inferior spirit stones or 14 inferior spirit stones will break the warranty within a month. How about that? This is his final bottom line. After calculating for a moment, middle-aged Sancho nodded and said, Success. Wu Tao breathed a sigh of relief, afraid that this person would turn back, and quickly wrote a transaction voucher, then paid the money and delivered the goods on one hand. Looking at the back of the other person leaving with the robe, I only felt that their back was shining with light. It was not easy, and they finally sold it. Wu Tao almost shed tears of excitement. Congratulations to Li Xiaoyu for selling the robe. Hey, it's better to sell the robe. A piece of spiritual stone just came crashing. By the way, isn't Li Xiaoyu going to buy spiritual rice? I'll weigh it for you. Han Taizhu looked at the 14 white-colored spiritual stones in Wu Tao's hand, feeling envious in his heart. Upon hearing this, Wu Tao immediately placed the spirit stone in his hand and arched his hand, saying, Uncle Han, make sure next time, make sure next time. Now is not the time to enjoy. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Innocence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Innocence. Uncle Han, goodbye. Hey, Li Xiaoyu, are you really not buying some Lingmi? Han Taizhu didn't give up. People are iron, rice and steel, Li Xiaoyu. Definitely next time, definitely next time. Wu Tao arched his hand and walked out of Ding District with a bundle on his back. He calculated and realized that selling such a small amount of spiritual stones was not the time to enjoy the spiritual rice. Just buy some rice to eat, why don't you pour more night incense? Now he needs to go to the rental office in the neighborhood to pay taxes. Anyone who successfully trades in the local market must obtain a transaction voucher and pay taxes. If they evade taxes and are caught by the local market, the consequences will be unimaginable. Wu Tao has been a good taxpayer throughout his past and present lives. Besides, for the sake of a 10% tax, it was really caught by the local authorities and not worth it. The transaction amount is 14 pieces of inferior spirit stone, which is 10% tax. That's one piece of inferior spirit stone plus 40 broken spirit stones. He carefully took out one piece of inferior spirit stone and then took out the remaining broken spirit stone lent to him by Zhongli. It was just right. Take good care of your tax payment voucher, and you can bring it over for statistics at the end of the year. If it reaches a certain amount, there are other benefits, the transaction tax collector reminded Wu Tao. Wu Tao took it and quickly thank you for bringing it up. After coming out, carefully place the tax payment voucher close to you and calculate in your heart. There are still 13 inferior spirit stones and 6 broken spirit stones left. If I pay rent for 6 and 15 broken spirit stones, then there are still 6 and 90.1 broken spirit stones left. I also need to buy demon silk and spark stones, Isn't it? After selling the robe, the joy disappeared completely, and a face turned into a bitter gourd. Hey! With a long sigh, he came to a shop selling refining materials and asked, Friend Dao, how do you sell sparkstone and demon silk? The shop assistant replied, how many lower-grade spirit stones do you need for 1 spark stone and 2 lower-grade spirit stones, and 1 kilogram of demon silk? Give me 6 spark stones and 2 pounds of demon silk. As if seeing the words, Spirit Stone .5, floating over his head, Wu Tao felt his heart twisted like a knife, feeling extremely painful. Carrying a bundle of spark stone demon silk on his back, Wu Tao dared not stay in this city for long. He made 7 or 8 turns and walked several more alleys until he was sure no one was with him before entering Xinda Lane. He is now carrying a huge fortune, so being careful is always right. Although this western outer city is nominally under the jurisdiction of the disciples of Wuchuan Mountain, who are sheltering and practicing safety, there are always some fugitives. As soon as he returned to his residence, he saw a chubby figure standing at the door, like a wealthy man. When he saw Wu Tao, he immediately snorted coldly, I thought you were going to escape rent. Wu Tao quickly stepped forward, with a pleasing smile on his face. He couldn't help but bend over and say, Manager Zhou, how dare I say what you're saying? The manager of the dental shop, Zhou's face softened and he said, I'm sorry you can't do it either. Alright, without further ado, I'll pay this month's rent, 2 pieces of inferior spirit stones for rent, plus the 4 pieces of inferior spirit stone deposit you previously owed, and other expenses. A total of 6 pieces of inferior spirit stones and 15 pieces of broken spirit stones. Wu Tao immediately took out the spirit stone bag, poured out all 6 inferior spirit stones inside his palm, and pointed out 15 broken spirit stones. He handed them over and said, Manager Zhou, they are already ready. You can order them. Manager Zhou nodded and took out a storage bag with his left hand. With a movement of the spiritual stone in his right hand, the stones disappeared in an instant, but instead entered the storage bag. Wu Tao looked enviously, this is a storage bag. I wonder when I will also have one. I don't know if it's possible to request Manager Zhou to let me touch. Seeing his envious gaze, Manager Zhou didn't care and said, alright, I'll go to the next house to collect the money first. Steward Zhou, please wait. Wu Tao stopped Steward Zhou and pointed out 10 broken spirit stones from his storage bag. He presented them with both hands and said, I'm new to the western outer city and I'm struggling. Thanks to Steward Zhou's willingness to lend me a deposit, this is a small gesture of goodwill. Please have a cup of tea with Steward Zhou. Steward Zhou looked at Wu Tao and just smiled for a moment before taking the broken spirit stone from Wu Tao's hand. You kid, you're very sensible. It's not in vain for me to take such a big risk and owe you the deposit, he said. When Wu Tao saw him accept it, he was overjoyed and nodded repeatedly, saying, yes, Manager Zhou is a great person. Manager Zhou placed the broken spirit stone and waved his hand, saying, alright, I already know the difficulties you face in practicing. First, you can dispel the evil energy on your body. You can stay for a long time before I can collect rent for a long time. Ah! Wu Tao's face was taken aback. Steward Zhou, you. Since you know that I am evil, why are you willing to rent the house to me? You are not afraid. Manager Zhou chuckled and said, afraid of turning into a haunted house. Afraid of what? If you die, everything on your body will be mine. Besides, the last guest in your room died inside. Seeing Wu Tao's frightened expression on his face, he smiled and said, "It's not normal for disasters to occur on the path of cultivating immortals. It's not necessary to pay attention to those who are not in a dangerous house. In this western outer city, if many people break through a seclusion, they will exhaust their lifespan and die in their rooms. Alright, I still have a few streets rent confiscated. I won't chat with you anymore." Watching manager Zhou's chubby figure disappear, Wu Tao remained in a daze for a while before regaining his senses. He patted the cheek of his hair and muttered to himself, "Manager Zhou is right. As a cultivator, why do you value this? Besides, Manager Zhou saw that I was evil and was willing to rent a house for me and give me credit, which is already a kindness to me. Even if I die and Manager Zhou takes my fortune, it's still. Even if it's funeral expenses." Wu Tao murmured and arrived at Zhongli's door, knocking heavily. Bang! Opening the door, Zhongli's youthful face appeared in front of him. He took out a lower-grade spirit stone from his arms, handed it over, and smiled, saying, "Zhang Daoyu, I owe you the spirit stone. I'll pay you back." Zhongli glanced at the spirit stone and said, "You are quite a believer. If you say it takes 2 days, it will take 2 days. That's right, Zhang Daoyu trusted me, so I naturally won't let him down. However, overall, I still want to thank Zhang Daoyu for being willing to lend me the spirit stone. Borrowing my spirit stone is equivalent to saving my life." Upon hearing this, Zhongli said, "It's just a spiritual stone. It's not as serious as you said. Alright, let's not talk anymore. I need to practice now. Well. Zhang Daoyu, goodbye." Wu Tao arched his hand and watched as Zhongli closed the door. Wu Tao returned to his own room, took out a spirit stone bag, counted 81 broken spirit stones, and couldn't help but sigh. How could this spirit stone be so unaffordable? In a day, it was once again pure and white. Life is too difficult. With a sigh, he thought to himself that he had become a first-level junior alchemist, and couldn't help but feel happy. He took out the spark stone and demon silk, and pounded the abacus in his heart. There are 2 refining materials here. As long as 1 robe is refined, you will receive 14 lower-grade spirit stones, all of which will be used as refining materials. Additionally, 2 robes will be refined, resulting in an income of 20.8 lower-grade spirit stones. The spiritual stones will only accumulate more and more, and life will become more promising. Breaking evil talisman, you can buy it soon. By the way, after dispelling the evil aura on my body, I will go to the Wuchuan Mountain Refining Hall to obtain a certificate of alchemist. With the certificate, those who want to bargain will have no excuse. Moreover, booth fees and transaction taxes can be reduced. I just don't know if it's difficult to test. Calculating, Wu Tao felt that his life would become better and better in the future. He was extremely excited and his mouth was almost on the tip of his ear. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Diary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Diary. On May 30th, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was sunny. Remaining lifespan, 2 months. On the 30th day of traveling to the world of cultivation, I am in a good mood today. The robe was successfully sold, and I am grateful to the middle-aged monk who bought my robe. His graceful payment will be unforgettable to me forever. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be able to pay this month's rent, be kicked out by the dental firm, or have even more unacceptable consequences. Special thanks to Zhongli. If it weren't for Zhang Daoyu's generosity and borrowing money from me. Zhang Daoyu is equivalent to my life-saving benefactor, and I would definitely repay him well if there is a chance. Zhang Daoyu's identity. Well, I have never discriminated against her identity, whether in past or present life. I have never discriminated against people in her industry. I have always been a law-abiding person, no matter which world I am in. I solemnly declare that in this life, even in the next, Wu Tao, will be incompatible with drug gambling. I have the opportunity to repay Zhang Daoyu. For her, the best reward is to take care of her business, right? The main task for the next month under a simple plan is to refine the robe and purchase the breaking evil talisman. First, eliminate the yin and evil qi in the body, otherwise everything will be in vain. With the profession of alchemist, I am now able to refine level 1 and level 2 wind robes, with great hope. Let's just briefly record it here. The text used is from a past life, and no one will recognize it. Don't worry about what will happen if someone sees it. There's one more thing, the steward of the Qinglingzong mine still owes me 20 inferior spirit stones, don't forget. On June 3, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was sunny. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 27 days. After resting for 2 days, I adjusted my own state to its peak. Hey, a person with evil spirits, where is the peak last night? Zhang Daoyu didn't receive any guests, it was a good day to refine the robe. I am grateful to myself and Zhang Daoyu for successfully refining the robe. Another 14 lower grade spirit stones have been deposited into the account, it's delicious. The day of dispelling the yin and evil qi in the body is getting closer and closer. The steward of the Qinglingzong mine still owes me 20 inferior spirit stones, don't forget. On June 4, the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was a rainy day. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 20.6 days. Damn it, the refining of the robe has failed and I'm not in the mood. It's not Zhang Daoyu's fault, after all. Zhang Daoyu also wants to eat. Steward Wang, I'll fuck your grandma. On June 5, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was a rainy day. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 20.5 days. It's another rainy day, and as soon as it rains, I feel inexplicably restless. It's hard not to say that it will rain all June. Gu, please stop singing. No umbrella, I borrowed an umbrella from Zhongli next door. Set up a stall in the local market. I had an expensive lunch this morning, a broken spirit stone. If I can't sell my robe tomorrow, I'll also come and sell boxed meals. They'll be better and cheaper than yours, and they'll ruin your dog days. There are 50 broken spirit stones left on the body. The steward of the Qinglingzong mine still owes me 20 inferior spirit stones, don't forget. Steward Wang, grass your grandmother. On June 6, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was a rainy day. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 20.4 days. Set up a stall. Feeling lonely. Damn it. Food vendors in the local market, pit. Steward Wang, I'm cursing your grandma. On June 7, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was a rainy day. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 20.3 days. I only have 19 broken spirit stones on me, which is not enough to pay for the booth fee. I had no choice but to borrow another inferior spirit stone from Zhongli. Zhang Daoyu suspected that I had gone gambling. A few days ago, I declared that I am not compatible with drug gambling, and how could I gamble? I immediately swore solemnly that if I gamble, I will not live forever. Seeing that she swore to take my path, Zhongli was startled and quickly took 100 broken spirit stones for me. Hey, Zhongli's favor is hard to repay. Steward Wang, I'm cursing your grandma. On June 8, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was a rainy day. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 20.2 days. I won't say anything, Steward Wang. I'll grass your grandmother. We will start selling boxed meals tomorrow. June 9, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, is a cloudy day. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 20.1 days. It's finally not raining anymore. Selling boxed meals, I said I would roll you up. I'm here. Please accept my sanctions, boxed meal monsters. After selling boxed meals for a day, the cost of purchasing ingredients was 20 crushed spirit stones. After selling them out, a total of 15 crushed spirit stones were received, resulting in a loss of 5. It seems that my conscience hasn't been eaten by the dog yet, so I shouldn't be able to earn any money. Steward Wang, I'm cursing your grandma. On June 10, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was sunny. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 20 days. Set up a stall. Hahaha, finally sold out. Although it was still sold for only 14 lower-grade spirit stones, citing the lack of certification from the Wuchuan Mountain Refining Hall, it was finally sold. It's not easy. You must obtain a certificate in the future. Spending 10 pieces of inferior spirit stones, I purchased 12-star fire stones and 4 pounds of demon silk from the refining material shop. Give Zhongli 1 more piece, pay taxes on 1 and 40 broken spirit stones, and there are still 1 and 60 broken spirit stones left. Passing by Uncle Han's Lingmi stall, he asked me if I wanted to buy Lingmi. I hesitated for a moment, but still didn't buy it. Now is not the time to enjoy it. By the way, Uncle Han also said he wants to introduce his daughter to me as a Taoist couple. I have some sexual interest. He looks like him. I said, Uncle Han, goodbye. Steward Wang, if you're in a good mood today, don't fuck your grandmother anymore. When will you repay the 20 inferior spirit stones that you owe me? On June 13, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was sunny. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 17 days. Refining the robe. Last night, Zhang Daoyu received a guest, but he didn't sleep well. He was always poor, and poverty is the original sin of everything. Due to poor mental health, the refining failed. I went out and bought 10 Ningxian fragrances. I hope to have a good sleep today. Steward Wang, I'm cursing your grandmother. June 14, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, is a cloudy day. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 16 days. Even with Ningxian, I still haven't slept well. Taking advantage of Huzi's opportunity, I chatted with Zhongli for a while. Zhongli said that it was the customer's request and that shouting loudly made him appear powerful. In fact, the other party was very fast and didn't feel anything. Indeed, the more people need to emphasize what they truly lack. Like me, I wouldn't emphasize being big. Refining Robe triggered the alchemist's lucky skill, successful. However, this is almost a failure. If you have a better mental state, you can still succeed without triggering the alchemist's lucky skill. Think of a way, Bao Zhongli's night. Of course, I don't really want to do that kind of thing. The evil aura on me has not been dispelled, so I can't do it. Mainly for a good night's sleep. When asked about the price, 30 broken spirit stones cost 1 night. Good guy, 30 broken spirit stones a day, 900 broken spirit stones in a month, 9 inferior spirit stones, which is equivalent to the original owner working and dying in the Qingling sect for 3 months. Paid Zhongli 30 broken spirit stones. Steward Wang owes me 20 inferior spirit stones, don't forget. On June 15, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was sunny. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 15 days. Wake up with full energy. Successfully refined. Happy. So I booked Zhongli for another night. Steward Wang owes me 20 inferior spirit stones, don't forget. On June 16, in the year 2562 of the Xianli calendar, it was sunny. Remaining lifespan, 1 month and 14 days. Successfully refined. I'm so happy. Out of 4 refining materials, 3 were successful, with a success rate of 75%. It can be seen that I am truly a genius in refining weapons. According to the calculation of 14 spiritual stones per serving, that would be 40.2 lower grade spiritual stones. The spirit stone that breaks the evil talisman is enough. Go set up a stall tomorrow and buy the breaking evil talisman after selling it out. Life is full of hope. Steward Wang, please allow me to say hello to your grandmother. The lights were like beans. Wu Tao finished writing the last sentence of today's diary, looked at the ugly calligraphy on it, covered it with a notebook, and placed it solemnly under his pillow. I hope the stall goes smoothly tomorrow. End of this chapter.